Warning, the following podcast episode includes discussion on rape, incest, sexual assault, and genocide. If you or anyone you know needs help, please feel free to reach out, and we will try to connect you with the best organization to follow up with.
Welcome to the Religious Treehouse. I'm Jody.
And I'm Matthew.
How are you doing today, Matthew?
I am doing pretty good. We're in a nice rainy spell right now where I'm at, so that's always fun. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're talking about making a big family dinner tonight, and I'm trying to remember what I'm cooking, but I don't really want to think about that. So let's get into today's topic.
Yeah, which is going to be an exciting topic, I think. We are talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, uh,
Ooh.
Genesis 18 and 19. Are you excited for this, Jody?
I am. Question. Sodom and Gomorrah, where would they be today? Like location-wise, would they be considered a vacation spot?
No,
Why
I
not?
don't. I don't think we've found Sodom and Gomorrah archaeologically. I could be
Really?
wrong. I don't know. I know for sure there are claims that we found Sodom and Gomorrah, but I have not looked into archaeological remains of Sodom or Gomorrah.
There's no old maps that are like Sodom and Gomorrah here.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, like we have an idea where Sodom and Gomorrah is.
Okay.
Um, Probably like near the Dead Sea area
Okay.
ish, vaguely. Um,
Are these
but
two
yeah,
locations or one? Because I always hear it's Sodom and Gomorrah.
I think they're like neighboring towns. They're like near each other. So like it's mainly Sodom is what we talk about in the Bible. That's like the main big city, but we've got Sodom and Gomorrah.
Is
It's funny because a lot of like biblical literacy tests that like people send out be like, hey, do you know the Bible? Like I think there's one where it's like asking high school seniors how religiously literate you are, and it's probably like a multiple choice question, and it says who are Sodom and Gomorrah? What are Sodom and Gomorrah? And there's a like very high percentage of people that say, oh, they were married, because there's just so little people that know like what the Bible says or what like or vaguely religiously literate. So don't know what Sodom and Gomorrah are. Maybe they were married, but no, these are towns, these are cities.
and Sodom is like the root for the word sodomy, right?
Yeah,
Like, okay.
and that I think is going to be the large part of what we're talking about today, and how Sodom and Gomorrah has been, or the story of Sodom and Gomorrah has been misunderstood to be homophobic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other really messed up things in this story. So before we get into this, we should do a brief content warning that we will be talking about a lot of sexual abuse and other mishaps around this conversation. So if that's not for you, feel free to skip this episode. But this is going to be an interesting conversation about a lot of delicate topics.
May I suggest one of our movie reviews?
Yeah,
We have fun doing those, and they're usually, especially if it's a children's movie, it doesn't get into topics like this, but this was an intense read.
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what I was expecting because I had never actually read Genesis 18 and 19. And then I
Mm-hmm.
did, and the whole homophobia of it, like I completely missed. I was like, at what point was I supposed to be like gay people bad? Because
Sure.
like this just made me really hate this one dude.
This one dude,
This one dude, Lot. I
Lot.
didn't like Lot. I wasn't a fan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But we can get into that as we talk.
Yeah, no, well, let's get into it. Maybe go through the two chapters in order about what happens, and I'm sure all of my other tangents I want to talk about will come out of that for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, but it starts with Genesis 18. We get three men appearing to Moses, not Moses, Abraham. Oh my goodness, Moses is in Exodus, wrong book. We get three men appearing to Abraham, and Abraham is serving food and water, and he's like clamoring to like be hospitable, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, let me give you food and water, and we'll make a feast." And Abraham's being this great host and all. He's doing all that stuff and then some. Uh,
The hostess with the mostest
yeah,
is what I would say.
that's what I would say as well. And they are revealed to be from the Lord, from God. So there's fun. A lot of Christians will try to interpret this as, oh, this was God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Nothing in the text is supportive of that, but that's a much later interpretation of it. Oh, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit came. What might be more likely is because we see in chapter 19, we see two angels, two men going off with Abraham. So they think, okay, because we have lines here. It says the Lord spoke to Abraham. So perhaps one of these men is God, and then two others are angels or messengers of some sort. But that's combining the two stories together. But we've got three people, three dudes, three men coming up to Abraham. Abraham's super hospitable, super like, hey, make a lot of food for you. And then they talk to Sarah and they say, Sarah, you're going to have a son. Or God talks to Sarah and says, Sarah, you're going to have a son. Sarah laughs because she's very, very old. She's like, I can't have a son. I'm way too old for that. Ha ha ha. And then God's like, why are you laughing? Don't laugh. And Sarah's like, oh no, I didn't laugh. And God's like, yeah, you did laugh. So it's supposed to be this like funny little conversation of like denying and then denying a denial. And then eventually we know later, not in this story, but we get Isaac, who shares the same root with the word laugh, which is where this story comes from.
Cute. Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
We love that. Also, it was a little rude of her to laugh, a little inhospitable. When a guest comes over, you must laugh at all of their jokes, like they're hilarious.
Yeah,
As
which
according to Miss Manners.
Miss Manners.
Miss Manners, like Emily Post, like, like when they had like schools where they like taught girls manners, like
Sure.
to laugh at your guests because like they're your guests, they're over. It's just polite. Sorry, I was just noticing some things on like that, and me always putting my modern brain into the Bible as I was taught to do. So, but do you think that would have been considered rude then? Because like God didn't call it out. Well, like he called it out. He called out the laughing.
Right. No, God did call out the laughing. So I think this is supposed to be a little joke. Like
Okay.
we're being serious about this. Like this is a dramatic scene to some extent, but it's also a little funny because
Okay.
like there's a Sarah like laughing and then she says, no, I didn't laugh, even though like literally she just laughed. So it's a little scene. It's not like I wouldn't draw any big importance from it, though obviously it's the Bible, so people have drawn big importances from it. But yeah, little scene, little haha, perhaps.
It's cute. I love the foreshadowing into Isaac's name.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm sure we've talked about a bunch, the names, the literary names here tend to have importance of some sort, and this is the importance of Isaac. So, moving on, the men leave, two of them, or three.
Two, two of them leave, and then God and Abraham talk.
Right, that's it. Two of them leave. God and Abraham talk. We get a little inner monologue from God. So like, should I tell Abraham what I'm gonna do? And then God's like, yeah, I should. Abraham's my man. And God says, hey, dude, hey, pal, I'm gonna destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because they're like awful. They're like the worst. And Abraham says, whoa, 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 whoa. That doesn't seem right to me. What if there's like 50 righteous people there? And God's like, okay, fine. Like if there's 50 righteous people, I won't destroy the city. And then Abraham thinks a little bit and he says, what if there's 45? And God says, okay, you're right. You're right. If there's 45 righteous people, I won't destroy the city. And then Abraham says, okay, but get this. What if there were 40 righteous people there? And God thinks about it for a little bit and he says, yeah, no, if there's 40 righteous people there, I won't destroy the city. And this goes on 30 people, 20 people, 10 people. And then when we get to 10 people, Abraham's finally satisfied. Abraham says, okay, cool. If there's 10 righteous people, you won't destroy the city. And God says, yeah, if there's 10 righteous people, I won't destroy the city. It'll be great. And and I think part of this is to try to show Abraham's moral integrity as like the founder of the faith. And part of it is just a humor in haggling over the correct amount of justice compared to mercy. So I don't know, it's one of my favorite verses of the Bible because it's just little silly haggling about will we destroy and commit genocide.
Well,
You know how it is.
it also brings like a levity to Abraham's relationship with God that Abraham wasn't like so fearful as to question what God would do if there was this many righteous people down and haggling him down.
Sure.
It feels more of like a comforting relationship than a deity someone would be scared of. Like it doesn't, this
Mhm.
conversation does not strike fear.
Yeah, no, as we mentioned in a few of our other episodes, some authors of the Pentateuch definitely saw God as this more personable figure that, walked alongside with Abraham or Adam and Eve, and whereas other depictions of God have God being much more distant and far away and control over everything. But this is definitely a depiction of God who's buddy buddy with Abraham.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I was giggling during the entire exchange.
Yeah,
I was like, what number are we going to get down to?
yeah.
When will we stop?
And 10 is apparently the right number. Whatever that means. But that's kind of the preamble to the Sodom and Gomorrah until we get into chapter 19, and that's where we really get into the destruction. But yeah, do we have any thoughts so far? So far, I don't feel like we've gotten too controversial. Um,
No, I don't think 18 is controversial at all. God's on a walk.
yeah, God's on a walk talking. Well, I mean, God has decided that God's going to commit genocide and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So there is that. There is that
There,
problematic aspect.
which I think we could all agree genocide's not good.
Yeah, I think we've said it before, and we'll say it again. It's the official stance of this podcast that genocide is bad.
Genocide is bad. It's real bad. Which, and this is like, this is a lot of levity for the setup of a situation of God going to commit genocide.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. Now my stomach hurts a little thinking about it. Like, and that really does show how great Abraham is because he's like, no, we gotta save them. Because even Abraham was like, I'm thinking genocide's a no-go.
Yeah. Abraham,
Like,
yeah, Abraham's like genocide is bad unless there's like 9 innocent lives. Like we can spare 9 innocent people to commit genocide.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't feel comfortable making this many jokes about genocide right now. So let's move on.
Okay.
um, but yeah, so the angels. Oh, okay, so up until this point, they've been called the men. They're the three men. Two of them go down uh, to Sodom and Gomorrah. Three of them talk to Abraham. But when we get into chapter 19, we're referring to them as angels. Uh, so the word angels in Hebrew could also be messengers, but I think I haven't seen any translations translate this as messenger. So these are angelic messengers that go down to visit Lot down in Sodom. And we know Lot is in Sodom based on earlier chapters of Genesis. Um, Genesis, what is it, 13 and 14, where Abraham's land could no longer support all of them. So they split ways and Lot resettles down in Sodom, where there are wicked people in Sodom, and we know that before this. We're already introduced to Sodom. We're already well aware that Sodom is full of wicked people. And we'll learn about what makes them wicked.
Yeah. What is it though with the word wicked? Why are we using the word wicked? Like it's not like they're sinful or they're other bad terms, they're wicked.
Sure. Um, I could I could go find the verse and try to tell you what the Hebrew is there, but that could take a while. Probably just the translation choice of like these are bad people of some sort,
Okay.
and wicked is a generally doesn't have too many connotations. Like, hey, these are bad people. We'll attribute wickedness to them,
Okay.
and then we'll get into what makes them so wicked at some other point.
Got it. Okay. I will accept that.
Yeah. um, but yeah, so Genesis 19, the two angels meet Lot down in Sodom, and we see Lot also providing some form of hospitality, but it is far less than Abraham in chapter 18, where so Lot invites men to eat and sleep, but he doesn't make this big old feast. He doesn't make this big old fiasco like welcoming these people in. So Lot is seen as morally inferior to Abraham, but as we'll see, morally superior to everyone else in Sodom. Was that track so far?
Yes.
So in order of goodness, in order of like, hey, we like this guy and we don't like that guy, it goes Abraham's the best, then we have Lot, and then we have everyone else beneath them.
Mhm.
You look confused or worried.
No, I'm judging because I don't find Lot to be that good.
Oh, why not?
What he does next,
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. um,
his next actions, his next choice is what determined how low on the totem pole he is for me.
yeah. Okay. Valid. So no, at this point, there's a bunch of men that surround the house that Lot welcomes them into, and they say, "Hey, you got two people in there. Send them out, and we're going to. What's the?
We
I think
want to know them, is
we
the
want to know them.
translation
Is the
I
yeah,
read.
which is a common euphemism to have sexual relations with them. We want to sexually abuse these two men,
Which is
and
not
this
cool.
not cool, not cool. Another official statement of this podcast: that's not cool. And this is where the critique of homosexuality comes in from a lot of conservative
Mhm.
Christians, primarily,
Mhm.
where they say, okay, these dudes are trying to have sex with these two guys, and that's not what's happening here. It's not like they're lusting over these two men that come in and they just like want to have sex with this guy. This is a structuring of power over foreigners, over strangers. This is structure. This is wanting to shame and embarrass foreigners who have come in to their land, to their area.
And Lot's solution to the sexual violence against foreigners is to suggest sexual violence against his two virgin daughters.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah. So this is obviously problematic,
Yeah,
and
you think?
yeah, and not much better of a solution. Arguably worse of a solution, but I think there's a lot we can take away from this. There's a lot that we can learn about this situation.
Lot sucks.
Well, yeah, there's that. There is that aspect of that. um, but the fact, first of all, the fact that they're virgins implies a heterosexual context for the situation, because what Lot is doing here is he says, okay, there's these guests here that like that would be bad if they were, sexually abused. Obviously, that would be bad. But to try to appease the mob, he offers up two daughters. So if this was a sexually, if this was a request based on their sexual preferences, and Lot knew that, offering up daughters wouldn't make any sense. It's not
Mm.
like they would have been rioting and say, "Hey, we want your sexy, sexy men." They're like, "Hey, we want to, assert power and dominance over these foreigners, these strangers." So Lot offers their daughters, implying that Lot obviously knew that this wasn't a homosexual desire. And we should note here that our modern notions of sexuality, our modern notions of sexual orientation are very different than ancient notions of sexual orientation. So the idea of being gay is not really a fleshed out idea, orientation in ancient uh, situations. So that should be the first thing that
Yep.
is acknowledged here, that these are completely different categories, completely different ways of thinking about sexual orientation than we have now and 2,500, 3,000 years ago.
Truth bomb.
So we move on. Um, and so the point of this is that we're inflicting shame on Lot for taking in these people. So Lot says, okay, have sex with my daughters, and that's going to still inflict shame on me somehow, because of the cultural mores that are
Yeah.
happening at the time. And still they deny the daughters. And this is another point where not Republican, that was a Freudian slip there, where conservative interpreters of the Bible will say, okay, this is why they had homosexual desires for these men, these angels. Yeah.
Virgin daughters. It said virgin daughters, but the idea of virginity was not the same then. Didn't that mean
Um,
unwed? Or
the
no?
um, I mean, the idea of virginity differed for sure, in the sense that um that their value was defined in terms of that for sure.
Okay.
But we see in verse 14, I want to say, chapter 19, verse 14, that Lot is trying to like talk to his son-in-laws. So what would make sense
Okay.
here is the situation that we have is that Lot's daughters are betrothed to men,
Okay.
to men of the city, to
Uh-huh.
people of Sodom,
Uh-huh.
but have not yet been married yet.
Got it. There we go.
So
Thank you.
so the reason that they would say no to the daughters, Lynn, could be very well that um, that that would not really be inflicting shame upon Lot because they're betrothed to be married to these men. So by sexually abusing those women, that would be attributing blame, that would be giving shame to the members of their crowd already. So
Oh,
they conclude, okay, we'll just attack you, Lot. We're gonna get you. We're gonna sexually abuse Lot. And luckily, at that point, the angels pull Lot inside. They say, no, we're not gonna deal with this. We're gonna solve this problem. Let's get out of here. Right?
yes. Okay. So just so far, there has been a lot of different scenarios of sexual abuse taking place, thrown out on the table.
Yeah.
I'm laughing through the pain.
Yeah.
And they then the angels step in. I don't know. I just feel like the thunder should have already come down. Where is the smiting?
Sure, sure.
It feels
Um
it's coming too late.
the and the angels that are there
Yeah.
talk to Lot and say, okay, you need to get you and your people out of here so that we'll smite these people. Because Lot is Abraham's nephew.
Okay.
So that's why we're so focused on Lot. There's this familial connection. Uh,
Abraham
and
had brothers.
what?
Abraham had brothers. Sorry, random thought.
Yeah, they had big families. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know off the top of my head, though I should. Uh, but yeah, Lot is familially related to Abraham.
Hmm.
But there's other things of note in this scene.
Yes.
First of all, do you remember our talk about Judges
Yes, I do.
and the end of Judges?
Yes.
So at the end of Judges, we have pretty much a retelling of this scene
Oh.
with some slight differences
Mhm.
with the Levite and his concubine, where the crowd comes out and says, "Hey, Levite, we want your concubine," and they end up uh, raping and murdering her. But there were no angels there to solve the situation there. So, this is a very poignant story that is told and retold and reanalyzed throughout the Hebrew Bible. A lot going on.
Yeah.
Do we have any thoughts so far? Take a
This is
breather.
heavy, man.
Yeah.
This is so heavy. And I'm not like I'm okay. I see the guys rolled up to the door and they wanted to have sex with the men, but it wasn't giving me so horny.
Right.
It was giving it was giving violence, which it seems to me then says like to not do violence,
Yeah.
which is more the story.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm getting so far.
Right. So we have we have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's bad people doing bad things, and later interpreters have come up and said, okay, this is because they were gay for some reason. But that is fairly clear, fairly evident, that there's nothing in this story nor anywhere else in the Bible that indicates that this is about homosexuality. And we'll talk about a few other verses throughout the Bible that reference this, uh, but this is not about homosexuality in any shape or form.
Okay, I'm ready.
Cool. So moving on from that, the angels, the angels warn Lot to leave with his family because they were sent to destroy the city. So they mercifully rushed Lot and his wife and his two daughters out of the city and told them not to look back. But and they go to the town or the city town. It was small, which is where we get that word Zoar. It's a pun on that. They go to the town Zoar, which is a little town, but unfortunately, Lot's wife looks back, and when you look back, that means you turn into salt.
Why?
Well, obviously, when you look back, you turn into salt. Come on, Jodie.
Why? Why salt? Why are
Oh,
we turning into salt?
so there's a bunch of salt formations just outside of the Dead Sea.
Hmm.
So this perhaps could be seen as an explanation for that. People see these salt formations and they think, where did this come from? And okay, it must have been because Lot's wife turned around and boom, we have salt now. So that's the most likely explanation I've seen for why we have this story.
Got
It
it.
could also be because this type of story is just something about it is really uh, uh, insightful. It causes something to stir in people because we see this in this trope in other literatures as well. In Greek literature, I'm thinking particularly of Orpheus and Eurydice,
Oh,
where the idea of you can't look back, you can't look behind you, but there's just some innate feeling inside everyone that you have to look back and see what's behind you. I don't know of any connections between those two stories, but uh, I always think of each other. I always think of both of the stories when I think about this.
I don't know.
They're
I'm
just
trying to imagine Lot singing "Wait for Me."
and there's also uh there's some rabbinic literature that talk about this that parallels uh what's his name Procrustes. It's one of those names that I've always seen like on paper, but I've never like said out loud. I'm gonna go with Procrustes. Um,
What do you do?
and so the rabbinic story goes something along the lines of in Sodom there was like a bed for hospitality that they'd welcome strangers in, but their form of hospitality was if they were too short for the bed, they would stretch them out so that they would fit the bed, and if they're too tall for the bed, they would cut off their limbs so that they would perfectly fit the bed. And luckily, Eleazar denied the bed. He said, "No, no, I don't need a bed," and that's why he survived. And that is very similar to, and this is after the first century where this story comes about, but it's very similar to the story of Procrustes, who does a very similar thing where he says, "Hey, come on, rest. We'll take care of you." And Procrustes likewise, uh, would stretch out his victims so that he would perfectly fit the bed, or he would cut off a limb so that they would also perfectly fit the bed if they were too tall. Until I want to say Theseus defeated him, but I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in classics.
You can't just drop that out of nowhere. You have to give me a warning before you're gonna say things. That's wild. That's insane. And I also think that is sexual violence to do something like that to someone in a bed. You
Sure,
know,
sure.
like specifically in a place where you're supposed to rest and sleep and you're most vulnerable.
Mm,
And sexual violence is like one of the most vulnerable things a person can go through. And for something to happen in a bed is very bleh. No, no. Okay, these
yeah,
were wicked people.
yeah.
Wicked. I get it now. I'm there. I'm with
Right.
you, wicked.
Again, this is a later interpretation. This is not the biblical story that I'm talking about here. This is much, 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 much later rabbinical interpretation. But yes, this would imply a very wicked people.
But I because like origins, like things look the way things look because of the way things were done previously.
Mm,
Like they don't fall out of a coconut tree. So
sure.
for things like that to maybe happen, like maybe they stopped sexually assaulting people and just started assaulting people in bed and were like, oh, close enough. Sorry, that was
Yeah.
really dark.
Bad people in Sodom. No one denies that. Everyone agrees.
Wicked.
Bad people in Sodom. um,
But
but
that
yeah,
doesn't mean they're gay.
no, it doesn't mean they're gay.
It doesn't mean they're gay.
But this is evidence that much later interpreters. I don't know when the rabbinic literature came out on this, but likely the first few centuries of the Common Era, even up until then, didn't see this as sexual immorality or homosexuality,
Yeah.
but rather saw it again as a sin of inhospitality, which was their problem. There's this inverse of hospitality happening, where like, hey, come in and sleep and rest, but actually we're going to kill and torture you.
That's not just inhospitable. That's wicked.
Yeah.
like it's not just that you're not being hospitable to visitors. Like, I mean, they're truly not loving thy neighbor. Like,
Sure.
that's not happening at all.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a crazy story.
Yeah, no, there's a lot happening here. And it gets worse. So after this, we get Lot who says, this is our place isn't for me. We need to go to a cave, obviously.
Why?
And
Why a cave?
oh, and the daughters are like, we need to preserve our father's offspring. We need to like keep this legacy going. So Jodie, it's going to get so much worse before it gets better.
I know.
So what they do is they get their father drunk and they have sex with him and then they get pregnant. And then they give birth to Moab and Ben Ami, which are the Moabites and the Ammonites.
Listen, hate to put our modern context on things. A drunk person cannot consent.
Right. Yeah.
He was sexually assaulted and incest happened.
Yeah.
I know the concept of incest during these times was different.
It was still very bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. We can agree on that. But
Yeah.
I know the waters were a little muddier. But
No.
this was just straight up bad.
Sure. I'd argue they were equally muddy as our time. Like I don't think there's anyone that was like, okay, that was fine. I think this was generally widely agreed on. Like, no, you don't do incest.
Okay, thank God. Thank God. I'm never sure because sometimes you hear about, well, you know what? No, those were white people, the English. So that's different. Going back, it's crazy. It's crazy. He was going to sacrifice their bodies to a large crowd. I wonder if they heard and they were like, well, here's what we're going to do. Sick. It's sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so this must have been to me, it's like it was written as a slam dunk on the Moabites and the Ammonites.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say both of those correctly?
Yeah.
Gold star. But it seems like a way to kind of trash talk. As I've learned,
Yeah.
I love biblical trash talk.
Yeah.
So
no.
Are they kind of saying you guys are the product of incest and you're a little stupid and dumb and we hate you?
Yeah. And then just one more thing. What it'll just get a little bit more worse before we can get a little better.
Oh damn.
This is likely referring back to Noah. What's happening here? So after the flood that Noah is famous for in his ark, after that we get Noah, who there's the aftermath of a great destruction. We have Noah's sons getting his father drunk, and then becomes the object of a perhaps sexual transgression. The wording isn't necessarily clear there, but there's a lot of speculation that there was a sexual transgression happening with Noah and his son Ham, and it results in the Canaanites, which are another rival people group in the area.
Wow.
So this structure seems to be based largely on what's happening with Noah and his sons.
If men can give birth in the Bible, why can't they give birth now?
Well, no, it's not that men gave birth. Oh, it's that through Ham's lineage, um, there were, and there's also we'll talk about this in some other episode, I'm sure, because there's a lot of racist ideologies attached to Ham. Um, but the idea that Ham is the father of a handful of other people groups around the Israelites of that time period.
Oh, okay. I see where the slam dunk is now. I do prefer mine. Um, but I wasn't writing. I was
Yeah,
not an author. Okay, wow. Wow. So quite a bit of sexual violence in the Bible there, isn't
yeah.
there?
This isn't your feel good story.
No,
No.
no, not at all. Okay, so someone reads that and
Right.
is like, and this is why we don't like those homosexuals. I'm sorry, how did you get there?
Yeah, so it takes a while for that interpretation to come around. Uh, in the Bible, we have a handful of places that talk about Sodom. A bunch of places refer to Sodom. Most of it is just like, hey, remember that time when there was like these really, really bad people and then God destroyed them? And they're like, yeah, we remember that. That was rough. Uh, but there's two places that I think of in particular that kind of talk about the morality of what's going on here, and neither of which imply that homosexuality was the problem. So the first of that is going to be Ezekiel 16,
Okay.
1649.
Mhm.
It reads, "This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty and did abominable things before me. Therefore, I removed them when I saw it." This is God speaking. So here, even the one of the earliest interpretations of what we have of Sodom coming from the Bible itself is saying that, like, hey, these people were really prideful and were not helping the poor and needy. They were not charitable. This is the problem of Sodom. They were bad people, and there's really nothing to do with sexuality in Ezekiel talking about Sodom.
Hey, these people are wealthy and prosperous and they have a lot, but they treat their neighbors like dog duty and
Yeah,
aren't kind, and therefore they should be gone.
right,
What
right.
an interesting message.
It would be hard to imagine today. It'd hard to be hard to imagine that happening
So
modernly.
hard, so
But
difficult. But yes, yet
yeah,
nothing about sex.
right. No, there's nothing there regarding sexuality. The word that people might pick up on is they did abominable things, and they're, oh, okay, obviously that means they were gay. But no, there's no reason to assume that.
I think letting children starve is abominable,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
might be a hot take.
and I think that's also what the author of Ezekiel was thinking. Yeah, like, hey, y'all are rich, y'all can afford this. Maybe we help the poor and needy instead of attacking visitors.
You have the means to make life better for people in need, and
Mhm.
yet you choose to prop up what brings you more.
Yeah, yeah. No, that I think would be a good summary of Ezekiel's critique of Sodom.
Sorry to keep going back and forth on it. It's crazy to me because do you think people still read this and go, ah, yes, the gays?
Well, they do. That's very common in conservative interpretations of the Bible.
That's crazy. Okay, what next?
Up next, we have the New Testament. I figured that it'd be good to include some New Testament text in this, and we get Jude 1, which is only one chapter book. So the book of Jude, verses 6 and 7. We have, and the angels who did not keep their own position, but deserted their proper dwelling. He is kept in eternal chains in deepest darkness for the judgment of the great day. Likewise, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which in the same manner as they, indulged in sexual immorality and pursued a natural lust, serving serve as an example of undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. So this one we see notes of sexuality being included in the problem of Sodom and Gomorrah. But what we don't see is homosexuality as being a problem of Sodom and Gomorrah. What conservative interpreters hone in on here is the phrase unnatural lust, or another translation could be other flesh. And they say, oh, okay, so this is gay. That's what we're interpreting here. But this is coming, first of all, immediately after a section talking about humans mating with angelic beings, with supernatural beings. So this seems to be very clearly referring to, hey, people don't have sex with angels. And also, that's kind of what's happening in Genesis 19. We have the angels in with Lot, and they're trying to sexually abuse those angels. This is not referring to homosexual lust, homosexual desire.
No. Okay, because I was a little worried for a couple of reasons. Number one, I thought you were going to say something about animals.
No,
Okay.
that's elsewhere.
That's elsewhere.
But we're talking about angels here.
Angels. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense because reading this, I don't know why my brain immediately went like, oh, so did the propaganda and switch up happen between the Old Testament and the New Testament? And like, is the New Testament a little homophobic? But like, even reading this, like the way you explained it, it's like, no, because that is an unnatural lust between humans and angels. And that's what they were pursuing when the men showed up for the angels.
Yeah.
So again, the twisting of words, the twisting of propaganda happened after the New Testament. Right?
Right. Yeah, well, or during. So I think one of our earliest examples of interpretation, the earliest example that I know of, and there may be earlier out there, I don't know, but the earliest example that I see of interpreting the story of Sodom and Gomorrah as being a problem of homosexuality comes from our old pal Josephus. So Josephus seems to be interpreting this as there being homosexual lust happening there. And we also get this with Pliny. I want to say Pliny, Philo, and a few other Roman interpreters of this era. So this seems to be an outcrop of Roman culture and being part of that dialogue. So I don't think Roman culture was as open to homosexuality as we would like to imagine it being. I think it was very much in the conversation, and Josephus and Philo and a few others around the era tended to lean more on the side of, hey, let's not be gay. So this interpretation does go back quite a while, but it is by no means the dominant interpretation. This seems to be, because there's a bunch of other rabbinical interpretations from this area up until medieval times, up until nowadays, where like this is very evidently not about homosexuality. But we do have some interpreters, primarily Roman interpreters, that do see Sodom and Gomorrah as being about homosexuality.
You got all your words out for that one?
Go for it.
Okay, so like, then maybe I'm just thinking of the Greeks, but I thought the Romans were into that too. Like, I genuinely, but that makes sense. And like, the Greeks took care of the Roman. No, the Romans destroyed Greece, right? Like that was the whole big thing with the Romans and the Greeks.
Yeah,
I'll get this back to the Bible at some point.
Yeah, the Roman Empire, there's overlap, but when you think of the Romans as compared to the Greeks, the Romans are after.
They're after. And like they like appropriated the Greek pantheon and like took their gods and like gave them different names in their the planet. Okay. So I'm thinking about the Greeks and then to the Romans. And the Romans just sound so uptight.
Well, they're
pushing an agenda.
there seemed to be a
And
cultural dialogue happening there. Like there were lots of Romans that were like, hey, like much like today, I think. And again, I'm no expert on like this area, so find someone who knows more about this than me. But there seemed to be intercultural dialogue happening.
okay. 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 And then we get to the biblical stuff and we get to Josephus. And
Mm-hmm.
all I need to say about that dude is I don't like him. I don't like him. He's a big old coward. He
Yeah.
did not stand on business. And then he comes in and he starts being the little Romans writer boy. Like they probably snapped at him to get him to go places at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And but people have to do what they can to survive. I don't know. I'm just having many because when we talk about Josephus, I'm like, okay, this is a real person I feel like can be a haterade too, like to his memory. But when you talk
Okay.
about biblical characters, I try to be as nice as possible. I don't know. I just feel now that Josephus contributed to this. And that's not cool.
Yeah. Again, like this wasn't the majority interpretation in early Christianity or Second Temple Judaism, but this was not unheard of.
Okay.
Though still, like if you're citing biblical text and you want to
Mhm.
only look at the biblical text and you don't want
Yeah.
to look at outside interpreters or anything like that, there's no evidence whatsoever that Sodom and Gomorrah was a result of sexual sin,
Yeah.
or sorry, homosexual
Okay.
um, it desire or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's only until you get outside interpreters, such as today, where they attribute the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah to be homosexuality.
And like that who is it to say if that's incorrect to do? I'm sorry. I'm asking weird questions today. But because it is, if it's incorrect, shouldn't people be pointing out that it's incorrect? And can't everyone agree? Like, wait,
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of this goes against you know preconceived power structures, and it goes against the narrative of like, oh, okay, actually, Sodom and Gomorrah weren't um, weren't gay, or however you want to say it. So it goes against power structures. And we should also note, like, we're not talking about any of the other verses, any of the other stories that are used against um, LGBTQIA plus peoples. There's plenty of other verses that we will talk about, I'm sure, at some point regarding this conversation. But suffice to say is that the Bible generally isn't going to be as progressive as you will want it to be, but it certainly isn't as conservative as a lot of conservative Christians are going to want it to be. Most of the 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 critiques against homosexuality are a result of power differentials that are being critiqued, or gender roles that should be performed correctly given their cultural context. And at no point is same-sex attraction for women ever addressed. So lesbians are fine according to the Bible. There's nothing at all that refers to lesbians anywhere in the Bible. The only critique the Bible may have is for same-sex attraction for males, but that's a very complicated, very detailed conversation that we will have in detail at some other point, probably.
have you heard the Billy Eichner audio of him yelling, "Let's go, lesbians, let's go"?
No.
No, okay. It was Billy on the street interview thing. It was really funny, but when you said, yeah, that's what happened in my head. Yeah, no, if we are just talking about this about Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yeah.
because as I can't speak for you, but as someone who has sat in a pew and heard the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, like kind of, but then heard the testimony of someone who said that they were fighting their gay attraction and that they had come back and like they were no longer sinful, and having to hear a story so heartbreaking
Mm-hmm.
of like self-hate and just
Right.
I felt, thank you for doing this with me. I
Mm-hmm.
feel it's important to sit and talk about this specific story because it is used again and again as a
Yeah.
reason. And yes, I know the Bible isn't going to be exactly what I want it to be, but if it was exactly what I wanted it to be, it would be the book of Jodie.
Yeah.
And this is the Bible, which took from so many people. It's not just one person's book, it's so
Mhm.
many people's book. And so all of
Yeah.
those ideas are going to show up then, right?
Yeah. And it should also be noted that if you're Christian or Jewish or you hold the Bible to be authoritative in some sense, and you have also come away with the conclusion that um, that if your brother-in-law dies, you shouldn't have to marry their wife, or that slavery is actually bad, or all these other different conclusions. If you've walked away and came with those conclusions, then you have all the tools available to also walk away and realize that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be LGBTQIA plus. But because of the inherent power structures involved in a lot of religious institutions, that narrative is often uh, progressed.
So we love you no matter who you love. Love may be too strong for Matthew. I love. But this has been a really fun episode. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, no, this was a lot, and there's a lot that we didn't touch on, and we tried to be as sensitive as possible with um, such a rough text. But please reach out to us if you have any thoughts about what we said, and I'm sure there will be a lot of thoughts. So this was fun.
You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, anywhere you can get a podcast, you can find us. You could also come and follow us on socials. Matthew posts some really cool art videos that I think are nifty. We are on Instagram, TikTok, posted on YouTube, Bluesky, Twitter. Email us at thereligioustreehouse@gmail.com.
That's right.
Yep. Comments are turned on for the podcast. So if you want to leave a comment there, go right on ahead. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.